coming out of the box hot, saying this is tragic. We have the body. We have no proof at this time of any foul play.
Coming out of the box hot saying this is tragic. We have the body. We have no proof at this time of any foul play. That was the official tone.
There was no need to put that last part that way. They could have just said there was nothing obvious in our...
There was no need to put that last part that way. They could have just said there was nothing obvious in our initial assessment of the body. We are investigating.
Your version than the version that has been framed. My recollection is not that authorities ever came out and said there's just no foul play, point blank, the investigation is over.
They did not say it that way. You're right. They said
so
we don't have any evidence of foul play at this point.
But that is not what landed in the public record. What landed was a door closing before it ever opened. My recollection is not that authorities ever came out and said there's just no foul play, point blank. They said we don't have any evidence of foul play at this point.
At this point, but it's an ongoing investigation, right? And I think, that's actually not uncommon in the sense that, like, you're able to examine a body and see that there aren't signs of defensive wounds and things of that nature. I understand your point.
At this point, 3 words. But in a state where the past sits in the room like a witness nobody called, those 3 words did not read as caution. They read as a verdict.
Point, which is people interpret it one way. It became a narrative as to, did these folks jump to a conclusion too fast? Well, what I would tell you is this, and I just want to reiterate. I think that people have every right to be skeptical. I think people have every right.
Think of a 9/11 dispatcher writing a note on a pad, then tearing off the top sheet before the ink is dry. That is what the initial statement did. It told a family their son was gone, and before they could ask how, it told them what not to believe.
To have opinions about the quality of an investigation. I would say that a learned opinion would wait to see what the investigation actually uncovered. But people have the right to have those opinions. I think
people have every right to be skeptical. People have every right to have opinions about the quality of an investigation. But a learned opinion would wait to see what the investigation actually uncovered.
Where it gets dangerous is when you presuppose a verdict, when you presuppose that certain people are culpable. So I don't fault anybody for asking hard questions.
The problem is not the waiting. The problem is what fills the waiting. A young man named Nolan Wells drowned. The body was recovered, and almost immediately, the machinery of speculation started turning faster than the machinery of evidence.
I do think that we're living in a society, Chris, where it is much easier to let our ADHD or our attention deficit get the better of us because we feel entitled to answers. Like something gets us fired up as citizens, and we immediately feel entitled to answers.
We are living in a society where it is much easier to let our attention deficit get the better of us because we feel entitled to answers. His family is entitled to answers. The people in the community are entitled to answers. There should be transparency.
Answers. His family's entitled to answers. The people in the community are entitled to answers. There should be transparency. But there are a lot of people who view themselves as internet detectives, and their sort of short attention spans are so consuming that instead of waiting for facts, instead of waiting for evidence, instead of waiting for the investigation, they create their own theories, their own facts that are completely baseless. And I think
But transparency is not the same as conclusion. And the gap between those two things is where this story actually lives. Internet detectives create their own theories, their own facts that are completely baseless. That is dangerous.
That's dangerous. And candidly, it's not just dangerous to people like my client. It's dangerous to the process. Let's assume in a case that there's actual foul play, whether it's this case or any other case. If you've got 100 theories that have been put out and then debunked, you arguably have created reasonable doubt if the investigators actually believe that there's something and someone to go after.
It is dangerous to the accused. It is dangerous to the grieving. And it is dangerous to the one thing that is supposed to hold the whole system together.
I think that people need to think about this, not in terms of just the damage that they're causing to individuals who are innocent and are being wrongfully accused of stuff. I think they also need to think about it in terms of the damage to the process itself.
If you have 100 theories put out and then debunked, you arguably have created reasonable doubt if the investigators actually believe there is something and someone to go after. The past is not evidence.
Yeah, I think that there's been an erosion over a long time. I think it's a balancing interest. For instance, I believe that other than some cases involving minors, I think there should be cameras in every courtroom. Why? Because I'm older than you and pretty much everybody watching this right now. But I remember when it was trust but verify.
There is an erosion that has been happening for a long time. I remember when it was trust but verify. We are not there anymore.
We are not there anymore. As a lawyer, as an officer of the court, as a longtime journalist, we're not there anymore. People don't trust me. They don't trust you. They don't trust these cops. They don't trust anything. And we understand why. Good reason, bad reason, no reason. We are where we are.
People do not trust the police. They do not trust the press. They do not trust the process. And in that vacuum, the loudest voice becomes the official record.
Now I believe it's the reverse. You've got to have transparency. You've got to let people into not the investigative process, of course, but we have to err on the side of transparency. And now you have a revenue model that is based on speculation. I have no problem with curiosity. I have no problem with people saying, oh, this Russ Latino, man,
Now you have a revenue model that is based on speculation. Curiosity is fine. Questions are fine. But there is a line that no longer exists.
Good. It's all fair game. There is a line that no longer exists, which was, yeah, but you're saying something as a matter of fact that is really just an opinion and is based on something that isn't true, that you know isn't true. That is now a common consideration, and it is all over.
You are saying something as a matter of fact that is really just an opinion and is based on something that is not true. That is now a common consideration. It is all over the place.
I care an awful lot about the things that I think have made this country great. And, we talked about this on your program, but we're celebrating 250 years. And Chris, if I'm honest, I'm worried about whether or not we get another 250. Because a lot of the bedrock concepts that I think did make this country great, if you're talking about the rule of law, if you're talking about the presumption of innocence, if you're talking about due process.
If you are talking about the rule of law, the presumption of innocence, due process, those things are being dramatically eroded by a culture that wants answers now or sees a tragedy like this as a game or entertainment or a way to make money.
Those things are being dramatically eroded by a culture that wants answers now or that sees things like this, a tragedy like this, as a game or a form of entertainment or a way to make money. And I just worry about our ability to persist as a culture if adults like you, candidly, don't step up and say, there's got to be nuanced thought. These things have to be based on evidence.
Here is the question that turns this from a local tragedy into a national warning. If the public can convict a man before a single autopsy finding is finalized, what exactly is left for the grand jury to decide? The past is not evidence.
The initial statement they put out, I don't think was worded the right way. I think it could have been done a different way. Now, this is stylistic, yes, but I think it had an emotional impact on members of the community, specifically the family, and probably a significant number of other black folks. Why? Well, there's another layer to this. I haven't even said the word yet. Mississippi. And you're from there. You take it a certain...
The geography matters here. Mississippi. And you are from there. You take it a certain way. It is personal. It is bothersome.
So I think you said that some of that narrative would be bothersome to me. I mean, I think there are parts that are bothersome, but maybe not the ones that you would assume. Nobody in Mississippi denies the history of this state. People are very cognizant. In fact, we're reminded constantly of the history of this state. And it's dark. And we understand the tentacles of that darkness persist today. That there's skepticism today because of that.
Nobody in Mississippi denies the history of this state. We are reminded constantly of the history of this state. It is dark, and the tentacles of that darkness persist today. There is skepticism today because of that.
Right. I think that there is a universe in which you can recognize the past, and because of the past, understand why there's skepticism or a lack of trust. But the past is not evidence.
The past might generate that skepticism, but the past is not evidence.
The past might generate that skepticism, but by itself is not evidence. And I think you got to factor in the truth that Mississippi is a state with about 37% of our population.
That is the pivot point. Skepticism is a lens. Evidence is a record. One is inherited. The other has to be built.
From the past, I think what people here would say is you got to recognize and give some context to the fact that things have changed, that there has been progress. And you also have to recognize that none of these
things have changed. There has been progress. None of these communities are homogeneous.
culture.
Not everything is one way, and it can definitely fuel the suspicion of the moment. Even if there were rampant racism going on right now in Mississippi, doesn't mean that that's what this case is about. And the burden.
Not everything is one way. Even if there were rampant racism going on right now in Mississippi, it does not mean that is what this case is about. The burden of due process does not change.
Get that there were suspicions about that based on the initial statements about what happened here from the authorities. But that's just one statement. As you suggest, taken a little out of context. I think it could have been worded differently, but that's neither here nor there. The family, as long as they're kept in the loop.
The family deserves to be kept in the loop. They deserve investigators who meet the standard. They deserve a grand jury.
I think that the idea of submitting this to the grand jury, I think Angel has, the DA here has a protocol where she submits every death that is not a natural cause death, a car wreck, a heart attack, to a grand jury, in part because she wants to be sure that this is a process of integrity. And so I do think a lot of people are probably reading into that.
The district attorney here has a protocol. She submits every death that is not a natural cause death to a grand jury. I would not read much into that either direction.
Yeah, no, I think she's following the same protocol and treating this case the same way she treats every case.
And, we'll see. They're not quick processes, but it shouldn't take forever. And I think the sooner that there are answers.
The normal process is not being subverted. That is the one thing the speculation machine cannot admit. The system is actually doing what it is supposed to do.
Culture is involved. Investigative tactics are involved. There's a lot here that matters. And in fact, it matters more than a hypothetical or a political debate or an exaggerated circumstance. It's real. Someone's gone. A life is lost. A light is out. And this was a good kid, and it was a family that did the hardest thing in the world.
A life is lost. A light is out. This was a good kid. A family did the hardest thing in the world, which is to get a young male through high school and into college.
Which is to get a young male through high school and into college whose brain was good and his heart was good. And everybody says beautiful things about Nolan Wells. And it must be torture for the family to not know what happened, to raise a good student, a good athlete, most importantly, a good person. It's terrible. And God forbid I ever have to live it. But I certainly have seen it lived too often. So
Nolan Wells, a good student, a good athlete, most importantly, a good person. His family deserves answers. They deserve that dignity.
Say that with any reasonable certainty, even knowing what I'm hearing about the initial autopsy findings. That does not lead me any closer to knowing how this happened. But it is really important that just because I don't know doesn't mean I should blame people without basis. That does not help my understanding. In fact, it probably hurts my understanding because now I'm going to have a bias that I have to overcome. And I think there are too many people with too many biases and not enough overcoming. And I think Nolan.
Just because I do not know does not mean I should blame people without basis. That does not help my understanding. It probably hurts my understanding because now I have a bias I have to overcome.
Wells was a tragic episode in life and is a tragic episode in death. And I think his parents have every reason to be agonizing over the unknown. And I do believe that they were not unreasonable in being triggered by what first came out of the investigators. Counsel and I disagree about that. Maybe I'm wrong.
Nolan Wells was a tragic episode in life and a tragic episode in death. His parents have every reason to be agonizing over the unknown. You would absolutely want answers if you were them.
If I do, I'll tell you if I think that it doesn't burden somebody whose confidence I have to keep. That's part of the job as well. One thing is for sure. There are questions to answer in Nolan Wells. The family deserves it. He deserves it.
There are questions to answer in Nolan Wells. The family deserves it. He deserves it. And frankly, we deserve it.
And frankly, we deserve it. Hey, thank you for watching. I post clips like this every day, so you can just subscribe and you'll get more without even having to think about it. I'll see you guys in the next one.
The grand jury is now the only public record left. Go pull the Jackson County coroner's initial report and the DA's public statement. Read them side by side. Then ask yourself one question in the comments. What did the public know first, the facts or the conclusion?